going on, Jerome's beautiful Friday? Birds are chirping and stuff, and it's time for another Vikings news dump. He sees you when you're pooping. And, pooping. Pooping gang, check in. Nah, maybe not. But, so yesterday, well, actually, today, 3 weeks from now, will be day 2 of the NFL draft, where Vikings currently do not have any selections, but, I mean, the Vikings could be basking in the afterglow of landing their future franchise quarterback, which would be kind of nice. It would be great. Also, so I keep forgetting that they're moving the draft. Just like it's going on tour, and it's in Detroit this year. It's going to be in Green Bay next year for whatever reason. But this is great. So the crooked Chicago Bears are probably going to take Caleb Williams, and they could potentially have their future franchise quarterback in Detroit. This ain't Detroit, man. This is Super Bowl. And also the Vikings could maneuver and find their future franchise quarterback in Detroit. So it's great for them. Just really happy. A guy who could be the future franchise quarterback, don't rule it out. Don't rule it out, is Spencer Rattler of South Carolina, also formerly at Oklahoma. He was on the Up and Adams show with the phenomenal, amazing Kay Adams. Also, he was out with Deshaun Jackson for whatever reason. I don't know, man. But so Deshaun Jackson, who knows ball, says that Spencer Rattler would be a great fit for the Vikings. And Rattler went on to say, this is from Vikes fan page, that's a great situation. Talk about the Vikings. It would be a blessing to play there for sure. They got a lot of weapons, and that is for certain. And Rattler's interesting to me because I feel like in terms of just an absolute dart throw, so I actually, we should switch things up. So I understand why people do have Nix a little bit higher. Nix could be a first-round pick, sure. I would prefer Penix over Nix. But in terms of that third strata of quarterbacks, in terms of Rattler, in terms of Michael Pratt, I would take Rattler. I mean, Michael Pratt, you could almost wager a decent amount that he'll bounce around and be like a decent backup, a competent backup for a while. We say the same thing about Bo Nix, where Michael Pratt, he's got a high football IQ. He's a very good leader. He's a multi-year team captain, but he is athletic. But I just think that his arm strength and accuracy and throwing off platform, throwing multiple levels, I think that just holds him back, right? But I think that he does have a decent floor. Rattler could be a Pro Bowl quarterback in 5 years, or he could be out of the league. Like, Rattler might be learning Canadian in 5 years. And that's not a bad thing, where if he hits in the right situation, he could be legitimate. If he ends up in a not-so-great spot, he will very quickly fizzle out, right? And don't get me wrong. I would prefer Maye, Daniels, McCarthy, Penix. But if you're going to roll, all right, so scenario. If the Vikings make a trade and they could get Rattler like at the end of the second, or they could take Bo Nix at 23, which would you prefer? So Nix at 23 or Rattler in the middle of day 2? I would take Rattler. Yeah. And even if the draft capital is equal, I would still take Rattler. It's weird to say. Anyways, but yeah, I obviously Rattler want to come here because it's got all the weapons here. It's fantastic. But also, it is meeting season. Suzumans arranging a meeting. Purple Persuasion put this together. Per Jason Lockenfora, the Vikings ownership has made it clear that after going year to year with Cousins, it wants a 15-year solution. Meow. The industry believes young GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is feeling some heat. And it's understandable too, where. So Kwesi, this is headed into his third offseason, third free agent cycle, third draft, and you do have to respect what the Vikings have done. And the Vikings have been competitive during this rebuild. And now, after parting ways with Kirk Cousins, who, I mean, obviously ownership gave their blessing when they signed him back in the day to the 3-year, $84 million fully guaranteed deal, now Kwesi has to find his guy. Now, Darnold is a Band-Aid, and Darnold does have some upside, sure, except I don't think ownership sees him as the answer. They want what other teams have, that true blue, young, homegrown quarterback, and I think the Vikings are going to go after. Like, I know the allure of sitting back and sticking and picking and building around Darnold, and we've shown a couple mock drafts where the Vikings can get some nice there, but I feel like ownership wants what the fans want. I feel like interests are aligned. And go and find your future franchise quarterback. Go do that. Now, it could cost a lot. But yeah, we'll get into that. Will Raggett has a great piece about it potentially costing more than you would think. Next up, so the Vikings and Jayden Daniels. Obviously, Skull SU would be in fact. Jayden Daniels and JJ go way back like chiropractic as well. But all right, so there's been conflicting reports, which is pretty standard this time of year. And well, brass tacks, the Vikings and Jayden Daniels don't seem to have had a private workout or a extensive meeting, right? And rap sheet, LSU quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner Jayden Daniels is set to meet with two of the top 3 teams in the NFL draft. First up, he'll head to New England on Monday and meet with the Patriots per his agent, blah, blah, blah. Now, 2 of the top 3 teams, Chicago's only meeting with Williams, so be a bop, 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 boop. He's probably going to meet with the Commanders at 2, as well as the Patriots at 3, which is perfectly understandable. Now, the Vikings are sitting at 11. They're sitting at 23. Yes, they have his guy Jefferson. But the conflicting report is this. So per Purple Switch put this together. Per Darren Dugan Wilson via Score North, there could be a situation where Jayden Daniels doesn't appear interested in meeting or working out for the Vikings. Quote, the Vikings want to connect with Jayden Daniels, so this would be more the Jayden Daniels camp saying, we think our client is going number 2 to Washington or his floor is number 3 to New England. We really don't think New England is going to move off number 3, so why have him do all these meetings? End quote. Right. And then Doogie pushed back on this too, but I don't know, man. But it could be a spot too where it really is just logistics. And if you're Jayden Daniels, sure, the Vikings could trade up 2, 3, 4, 5 and get him if he falls that far. But also, Washington might just stick and pick and take him at 2. Like, they may have already decided. I mean, Caleb Williams is like 99.9% chance going to Chicago. I mean, Washington may just be like, all right, Jayden Daniels, we're taking you. And that might just be the end of it. And maybe he's only meeting with the Patriots just in case, right? But I would understand it. So it's not so much like Jayden Daniels being arrogant. It's like, I do not want to go to Minnesota. I will pull a mini Eli or John Elway and blah, 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 blah. I think it really is just, well, I mean, the Vikings might be interested, except they're not in the area where I'm going to go. So, like, even given the relationship with Justin Jefferson. So I don't, I don't put that evil on Ricky Bobby. I don't do that with Jayden Daniels, but I don't know. It is kind of weird. Something that's not weird is that the Vikings do have a couple of holes to fill. Heading into this draft, PFF Vikings put this together. The biggest team needs for the Vikings after free agency, and then the puzzle piece emoji. Quarterback of the future, yeesh. Guard, agree. Actually, I'll just say interior offensive line in general because I'm not sold on Bradbury long term. And then also cornerback. I'll also toss in there defensive line in general. So I would love just a zero tech, 350 pounds, just controlling both gaps, taking up a center and a guard every single snap would be great. And or just a B gap penetrator, a guy that can get his own pass rush up front. Right. So I mean, quarterback, offensive line, interior offensive line, cornerback, and defensive tackle. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Next, so Maurice Jones-Drew. I'm surprised MJD didn't have Bucky Irving in the first round in his mock draft. But so in MJD's mock draft, also I love MJD back in the day, man. So he was one of my favorite fantasy running backs. He was fantastic. Jaguars. We don't talk about his Raider years. Pocket Hercules. I mean, come on. Also, I played for Bob Ladouceur back in the day in high school. That's fantastic. It's really good, man. But in his mock draft, the Vikings drafted 5 for Drake Maye, who takes a bit of a draft day tumble, but also 5 quarterbacks in the top 6 picks. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so Drake Maye, projected trade with the Chargers. The Vikings acquired an additional first-round pick last month for this reason. With Maye available here, Minnesota jumps at the opportunity to select a quarterback with ties to new quarterbacks coach Josh McCown. Maye's big arm and ability to evade pressure in the pocket should excite Vikings fans. Now, I don't see Drake Maye falling. I just really don't see him falling out of the top 4. But you could see a path where teams just simply play things a little bit closer to the vest. And Maye has some gambling issues. Like he will take chances. He will try and force things, and he does have some things to correct. And frankly, he's a lot more like Caleb Williams than people give him credit for, because Caleb Williams definitely needs to clean up some footwork. Just same thing with Drake Maye. And sometimes they make the easy throws look very difficult, but also sometimes they make the difficult throws look very, very easy. And I think that's the upside with Drake Maye. But, I mean, teams may go with Jayden Daniels. They see him as safer. They may go with J.J. McCarthy, same thing. They may go a different direction, like wide receiver, offensive tackle, right? But I like Drake Maye. I like, the more I think about it, is like, more, just go get him. Like, if McCown vouches for him, if Kevin McConnell thinks that he can work with him, and also he's coming to a spot where he doesn't have to start right away, which I think would be beneficial for him, go ahead. But also, if you say you put Drake Maye and you start him right away and throw him to the Wolves, unlike the Patriots, where the Patriots are a very talent bereft team at this moment in time. And that's not an aspersion of them. It just is what it is. Patriots fans will even tell you that roster needs a lot of work. Where Drake Maye is going to go out there, play hero ball, and probably going to have training scars and probably just going to cement some of those bad habits. And I think he could be lost. But if and when he comes here to the Vikings, like he'll sit for a year behind Darnold, all of his bad habits will be broken down and built up. He'll work his ass off in the weight room as well as in the film room, and he'll be ready to go. It's a perfect situation for him, but we'll see. But also, if and when the Vikings do trade up, will they overpay? This is from Will Rag at Sports Illustrated, which I thought Sports Illustrated was gone. Hopefully they stick around. Will Raggett's phenomenal. But Vikings may have to overpay to trade up for a quarterback in this draft. And this is what he wrote. In a recent quarterback-only mock draft from ESPN, the Vikings trade 11-23 and their 2025 first-round pick to move up to the Cardinals' number 4 spot and take J.J. McCarthy. It feels like a lot to pay up to move up 7 spots for McCarthy, but Arizona has all the leverage. They could stay put and take Marvin Harrison Jr., but they could also talk to other teams like the Giants, the Broncos, the Raiders about potential deals. If the Vikings have McCarthy much higher on their board than Michael Penix Jr., they might have to pay a hefty price to go up to 4, or even the Chargers pick at 5. If they want to convince the Patriots to trade out to 3, it's probably going to take 11-23, next year's first, and even more on top of that. I think that's fair. And I know that you can look at specific trade charts and be like, well, 11-23 should get you to 3. Ain't gonna happen, bro. Right? Because the Vikings are generally going to be the ones doing the asking in this spot, and some of the other teams do have leverage, but the Vikings do have the most chips at the table. And yes, that even includes the Giants at 6, because the Vikings have 2 first-round picks in this year's draft. And yeah, I mean, a team like Washington or New England or Arizona or even the Chargers trading down to 6, I mean, that does have value, but the Vikings do have 2 first-rounders, and that has a lot of value. Right, so yeah, it could be a spot too where the Broncos may be desperate and maybe really itching to come up. I think that's why the Vikings do have these contingency plans of Penix, of Nix, of Rattler, if they can't get their way and the juice is not worth the squeeze at the end of the day. Lastly, this is the best. This is the best. So Anthony Barr, which you forget that Anthony Barr was on this team last year. They brought him back. But Anthony Barr is on a 10-hour flight, probably traveling with our guy Afadi, maybe. 10-hour flight, haven't tweeted much, blah, blah, blah. Favorite memory in Minnesota. This is amazing. Too many good ones. One time we got stuck on a plane in Green Bay. That was the time that the plane skidded off the runway. Shocker. And Linval had a fresh-ass suit on. We finally got off the plane after like 4 hours of just sitting there, and LJ was sitting on a banana the whole time, and it ruined his suit. He was so bad, bro, but we were crying. and he had photos of it, too. It's just... So, initially, when I saw this on my timeline, I was just like, Anthony Barr is showing Dookie. Like, what the hell's going on here? But also, first off, that's a good-looking suit. It's beautiful. What is that? Velvet? I don't know. That's beautiful. What is that? Velvet? Coming to America is one of my favorite movies of all time. Sequel? A lot of people didn't like the sequel. I thought it paid homage to the OG movie, and it was fine. It was fine. But this is great. Plus, I feel like So, given the Vikings playing situation in Green Bay, they got to the hotel late. They got a few hours of sleep, and they had to get their ass up for a noon kickoff, I believe. But all that frustration, because, I mean, if you're literally just sitting on the runway, like, why can't you just pull the emergency slides and everyone just slides down, right? Why can't you just do that? So, people, they had to be getting a little stir crazy, being stuck in the tube, and the night before the game, usually there's like a walkthrough in a ballroom or a team meeting and a team meal. So they're sitting on the plane, they're hungry, they're tired, they're whatever, and so they needed something to break up the tension. This is great. I still think they lost though, but it doesn't matter. But that's still a great moment. Props to Anthony Barr for sharing that. But that's it. Again, I thought that there was Dookie on my timeline. That's it. You guys are the best. Happy Friday. Skull. No production value. Some production value.